Let's
Yeah,
just
what are we
talk.
talking? We don't need to do. I mean, do we
Everybody
really need to
knows what this
intro our
show is.
100th episode?
Everybody knows what this show is
Yeah,
and what
everybody
it's
knows.
not. Everybody definitely knows what it's not.
Yeah, it's
People don't
not.
come here.
People don't come here. People don't come here for politics. They come here for humor. What was that?
That's right.
You remember that? It was like what? It was like I went
What?
for the humor. It's like, did you even
And all
read
like,
the? It's like, did you even read the social media bio? Wait, what did you think? Like, I mean, what did you think you were gonna get?
Act like he like stumbled on the show. Like, come on, you didn't stumble on this show.
Exactly. You did not go to page 173 of Google and stumble across us.
wow, that's giving us some credit. 173, but you do have some haters, Josh. You've got haters. You've got moles within your midst. Because I don't know if the audience knows, but tell us what happened to your social media, bro.
Now, mind
So
you, he is our social media czar. Okay, so keep that in the forefront of your. Matter of fact, you're doing such a great job, and your qualifications, you could probably be on the current admin's cabinet.
hey, so look, I am the social media czar. It just so happens that my reign has gone like Nicholas, Tsar Nicholas. Now I'm the Romanovs. Now I'm running and in hiding. So I I get up one morning and my morning routine, like I get up, throw in a pot of coffee and mess around and stuff like that. And I would go to read the news and see what, great positive things are happening in the world and, how we're on that angelic ascendancy as a country, and how we're, very unified and everything. And I noticed that, about a about a week prior, Facebook, had sent me the whole thing like, oh, one of your posts went against community standards, blah 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 blah, and it was a post from May of last year, so May of 2021. And it was like, man, I hope gas prices don't get too high. And then it's like gas prices, and it's Hunter Biden, with the cigarette in the bathtub. And I was just like, what? First off, like, this is a very common meme. Like, it was everywhere. And number two was like, it's from over a year ago. Like, really? Y'all are bringing up old shit? Like, come on. So, it had to be a woman that pulled that, right? Dude, bringing up old shit. So, next thing I know, I get a notice saying your account is suspended. It's not like, hey, dude, I've had the 30-day bans. Like, yeah, dude, I've had those. I'm old hat at those. Right. I've got
We
the
know.
I've got the I've got the spider web tattoo and the teardrop. I'm old hat. No, it was like, no, your account is suspended, like permanently suspended. Or like you have 30 days to, disagree and request a review. And so I of course I disagreed with the decision. And I requested a review, which is last time I checked was earlier today, which is still ongoing.
So
But
okay, so I'm gonna now keep going with the other one, and then I want to bring up something because it's going to lead us into another conversation.
so I can't. So I'm like, I can't do anything with my, with my personal Facebook account. So I can't touch my author account, that I had. I can't do anything for the podcast. Like I, like, luckily, because when did Noah build the ark? Before the rain, right? Before the rain. Luckily, I had an old burner account that I had to dredge up. And so I've been using that, which it's got like and it looks like a burner account, right? It's got like 15 friends on it, and, and so yeah. So right now, man, I'm I'm
But
waiting
that
to
one
see
got
if
flagged too.
well, yeah, that one got flagged, but because of one of my posts. But I disagree with that decision, and they actually came back and was like, "Yep, we got that one wrong," and they put the
Okay,
post back up.
so I want to
Right?
pose something to Roger, who's a private company. They can do what they want, right? Now, Facebook for a while there, and I don't know if they've gotten better or not. I haven't been on Facebook a whole heck of a lot lately, but for a while, Facebook was branding themselves as this place you could go to let folks know that you were okay after the hurricane hit, or marked safe from this particular tornado, or whatever. And you could actually go in when a hurricane was coming, or if there was, a tornado or something, you could like put little reports in there, like I saw it over here, and it would go through its algorithm and everything. I don't know if they still do that or not, but wouldn't you say that that is a form of like the public square, where like, because if they're going to kick somebody off, they're not able to tell their friends and family that they're okay. It's like not being able to pick up the phone and call your family to tell them you're okay. Would you say that they're creeping closer to that, that public square type thing, where when they mute your voice there, it's like, well, how do I function? Do you get what I'm saying? Or are you frozen? You've got this look on your face.
I was giving you the smug look, and it was frozen, so not much of a difference. So it's the Elon Musk defense, right? Because that's what he's using with Twitter. Is Twitter's become the town square, and I think when it goes back to when we're talking about Section 230 protections, I don't know what the right answer is, because there's a slippery slope, and I fear even from the right, you hear, well, we need to remove the Section 230 protections, and I think we've even debated that and probably said that that's an avenue that you can take. But you remove those protections, it's going to have the exact opposite consequence, where those companies are going to censor more because they are going to be held liable. So I think the answer is, one, I agree with you. It is becoming the town square. And I think we never really hashed out the exact number, but I think it comes up to market share. You have to look at market share and say, hey, once you become a certain size, and I don't know if it's market cap, I don't know if it's number of subscribers or what that metric is going to be, but there is a point to where you are the town square now. And at that point, you do have some obligations to offer some type of freedom of speech or what have you. The other part that comes in to complicate all that is it's privately funded, private/public, right? Stocks, that type of stuff. You can own shares, and those, obviously Zuckerberg has a majority of shares. So at the point where you say, okay, you're now the town square, does the government have some obligation to provide some type of funding? Do they have to provide some type of infrastructure? And you can go down the road with that. So it is a very, very slippery slope. And I think I kind of just like the free market, man. Just let it work itself out, because what will happen is, if people get tired of it, and I get it, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the largest social media platforms right now. And you have those that are out there, the WeChats and the Gab, that are smaller, but people will gravitate towards the platforms that meet their needs. And that's the way it's supposed to work. And as people get tired of Facebook, and I think even now, since we've been on here, we've seen the market share reports come out, and the shares of Facebook, why they bought IG, and why they're looking at other platforms to buy. They bought WhatsApp. They're finding that the typical Facebook user that they had when the company started, they're leaving. Most of the people that are on Facebook, I know with my kids, and you guys have kids that are about the same age as mine, young adults, if not teens, they're not on Facebook. Like, I literally had to tell my daughter, like, hey, babe, you need to actually check your Facebook account every now and then, because especially when she was in school, a lot of the instructors would post stuff on there. They've got their group pages or whatever. But outside of that, they don't use Facebook anymore. They don't use Twitter. They don't use Instagram. I think my son hops on Reels every now and then, because he'd be on TikTok, but we've gone through the thread of TikTok, but he uses Reels every now and then. But they use Snapchat to communicate back and forth. And the big social media, our generation growing up, are on there scrolling through posts, and they just don't do it. I mean, at least my kids don't. My son being 20 years old, and my daughter being 23 and a 25-year-old, they just don't do it. They don't post. They're not on there. I think my oldest daughter, I don't even know if she even has an account anymore. I know my youngest son, or my son, he doesn't have a Facebook account. He doesn't have a Twitter account. So, the days of folks just getting on there in the masses and just scrolling through stuff and posting stuff aren't there. And maybe that's why it hasn't been a bigger issue than what it is. I mean, it's the old fogies, it's us and the older ones that are, Facebook needs to, they need to allow me to post and this, that, but the younger generation is just not on there. So yes, I do agree. It has become the town square. And I think going back to our Section 230 stuff, you just have to look at market share. But at the end of the day, just open it up, man. Just open everything up. The market will work itself out. People will gravitate to look at TikTok, right, Josh? I mean, TikTok came out of nowhere. That actually, I'd say it wasn't even TikTok. What was the Twitter one that came out before? Telescope. So I think Telescope actually came out before TikTok, and Telescope was allowing 30-second video clips. But the demographic, it's kind of like our podcast, right? The demographic between our podcast listeners and YouTube, it's night and day. They're totally different people. And when you look at Periscope, yeah, there you go. When you look at Periscope, that's what TikTok was. 30-second video clips, but the demographic of your Twitter user versus your Facebook user versus your TikTok user, it's night and day. It's totally different. So, at the end of the day, I just want to see an open market, man. Just deregulate all this stuff. Be liable for what you publish. We can have that argument whether they're a publisher or not. I think we can have the argument whether you're, the town square or not, which is probably tied to market share and the amount of users. But then you get a company like Twitter, right, Josh? That what's best guess? 40% bots minimum.
Yeah, I would say 40% bots. And they were talking about that. It was all over Twitter here yesterday or last night. A lot of the check mark accounts, dude, they were losing followers by the thousands. And a lot of people, that was right after, it was the same day that it was like, okay, it looks like on Friday, the deal's going through. Elon Musk is going to be the, owner of Twitter. And it looks like they were trying to, purge and get rid of bots. I checked our Twitter. We lost 2 followers. So we apparently we had 2 bots following us. So now we have a total of 6. We went from 8 to 6. So, well, you talk about, and you bring up the 230 thing. The Supreme Court earlier this week announced that they are going to hear a case that is based on Section 230. And so the case is Gonzalez versus Google. It concerns a lawsuit brought by the family of, and I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, Nahame Gonzalez. She was an American woman who got killed in the big ISIS attack in Paris back in 2013. Well, her family filed a lawsuit against Google, who, remember, Google owns YouTube, and it alleges that YouTube recommended, through its algorithms, recommended ISIS recruitment videos to, that brand of users. All right. So, in the case specifically, it centers on whether Section 230 protects online platforms from legal liability when it comes to their recommended content. And so that content, it's all user based, behavior, right? So that, everything you get recommended, people you may know on Facebook, pages you may like, that's all based on your, your activity on that platform. And it's the same with the other platforms. And so the Supreme Court has agreed to hear that. So, I mean, depending upon how that goes, either way, it's going to have, some downstream impacts on Section 230, and whether it further codifies it, or whether it opens social media companies up for other further litigation. So it'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting to see how that one plays out. I can't wait for the oral arguments, because that will be a good one to listen to. When it happens.
And that's an active measure. I mean, I don't want to cut Luke off before his thoughts, but to me, there's a line there to where, hey, I'm just a platform and people are posting whatever they want, right? Like, hey, obviously things that are against the law, kiddie porn, stuff like that, you block that stuff out, but I'm just an open platform. You can post whatever you want versus, and Luke, you probably have a better term for it, but an active publishing, method or activity that these folks are taking by recommended content, even censoring some of it. When you start to do that, you're saying, okay, I am now starting to act like a publisher, because that's what a publisher would do, as opposed to, hey, we're just free and open and outside of the illegal stuff, post what you want.
Yeah, I'd call it marketing, right? That they're actively marketing certain content to keep you on the platform and keep you scrolling by ads that people are paying decent money for you to stop on it for 1 second and then scroll by it again. I mean, that's how they do their metrics, which is strange. It's difficult to equate this to like a telephone. Back before cell phones, I think most of our audience, most of the ADU, are old enough to remember when there were no cell phones. You just had the phone in the kitchen and maybe one in the parents' bedroom, and that was it. You know, you hear a lot of people arguing about, well, it should be regulated just like a phone company. You know, phone companies aren't responsible if somebody prank calls you. It's the person on the other end. Phone companies aren't responsible if somebody calls and threatens your life and things like that, or calls you a bad name, unacceptable. But scale that up. I mean, how do you scale that? How can social media be like the telephone? You can hang up on the person, you can leave your phone off the hook, but now you can't communicate. On social media, it's like, well, you don't like what that person's saying, you can block them or mute them or whatever, but you're talking scale. It's like being, on the phone all the time. It's just, we live in a different world than 1983. It's totally different. But, I don't know. I hear the point about, active marketing and, targeted ads and things like that. But, it's tough. That's why we have a Supreme Court, right? That's why we have all these circuit courts, is so they can figure it out. What I do know is something doesn't sit right with me. I like Roger, like what you said, open it up, let the free market sort it out. And I think the free market is kind of sorting it out again, because Facebook sucks. It sucks.
Yep.
It's not good anymore. They took their formula that was working really well. Probably, let's see, 2009, 2013 is probably when it hit its peak, as far as 13, 14, 15, when it hit its peak as far as, interface, and there weren't ads everywhere, and you could actually connect with people. And it was, you'd see what your friends were doing online instead of, seeing what all these groups are doing. It's just, but it's gone downhill from there, and it's being replaced with stuff like TikTok and whatnot. But TikTok, again, is for, I would say it's targeted at a younger audience, but man, I mean, some people my age, maybe a little bit younger, are all over TikTok, man, because it's addictive. It's like cocaine, man. It's bad. It's worse than gambling. But anyway, I think that, maybe Elon Musk's X platform, what he's saying, the social media site that will do everything. He's saying that Twitter is going to help him, establish that. We'll see. Elon's always thinking big. We'll see where that goes. But yeah, Facebook, I think they're sinking a lot of money into this Meta project, and I just don't know if that's going to pan out. It doesn't look good. So one thing, were you going to say something, Josh? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just got one last comment on that. A certain podcast called "Facebook: A Dying Platform" a year and a half ago. I can't remember what that podcast's name was. It's 3 C's in the name. So but talking about like the advertising and stuff like that. Did you guys read the text messages between Musk and Jack Dorsey? So
Yes.
Dorsey and Musk are already talking, they were talking about a model that gets away from, advertisers, to fund your platform. And even, right. What said, if, the government kind of controls the space a little bit, they have to fund it. They have to provide infrastructure for it. Musk and Dorsey were talking about going like the Signal model, to where, it's funded, that platform's funded by a foundation that doesn't own the protocol for the platform, right? Because anytime you allow advertisers into that space, okay, the platform is funded by advertisers, well, then the advertisers get to say, they've got some sway on what's on that, what is going to be on that platform, what they want on that platform, what they don't want on that platform, because they're funding it, right? And so if you haven't read it, check it out. The conversation between Dorsey and Musk is a lot more articulate than I just put it, but it talks about getting away from ads, and stuff actually being the what props up that platform and what funds it, because now you're beholden to the person putting the money in, and if it's a foundation that doesn't own the protocol, yeah, they're putting some money in, but they don't own it, and so they can't they don't have a say in what it is and what it isn't.
Well, that's the whole point of Gab, right? I mean, Gab is funded by its users. They donate, much like Wikipedia. But the problem you have is they get to the end of every month and it's, hey, we're $5,000 short. We need money to keep this platform going.
Yeah. Well, that and the user interface on Gab was just complete hot garbage, right?
It
So,
was. It showed promise, but it didn't get better.
No,
That
it
was
didn't.
my thing. At first, I was like, "Well, this is looking more like MySpace than Facebook." And for those that remember MySpace, that had a, I mean, if you try, if you brought MySpace back tomorrow and worked on that interface, we'd say the same thing. This is garbage. But back then, it was great. And if they could have improved on it, and God, I heard a great story about MySpace. I'll save that for later. But yeah, I mean, they were on to the right thing. I thought that Gab was kind of on to something. The problem was Roger called this with Gab and Parler. It's like they're not sinking enough money back into it to make it better immediately. I think they were just trying to capitalize on it, but that is what it is. Okay, so we get one more thing, Josh.
I was just gonna say that and their echo chambers. It's the same thing with
Oh yeah,
truth. It's the same thing with truth. Like truth, you know what? The interface is fun. It's it's okay. It's it's a lot like Twitter, interface and stuff like that. But it's an echo chamber. And at the end of the day, as much as I hate people on the left and I despise them, and I have zero inclination to live with them or compromise with them or talk to them, like it's honestly it's no fun. If there's if it's an echo chamber, truly.
Josh needs active conflict in his life. And speaking of conflict, it makes him happy. It's his happy place. About a week ago, I guess it's about a week ago, a little more than a week ago, I emailed or I messaged the guys and I was like, we got to record tomorrow. We've got to record tomorrow because it was what I'm witnessing right now is an act of war. This is kind of the kind of stuff that brings on world wars. And most of you probably know what I'm talking about is when the Nord Stream 1, it was actually the Nord Stream 1 pipeline blew up under the Baltic Sea, a few hundred feet down. And I was like, holy crap, this is a big deal. And I encourage y'all, I don't know which episode number it was, but probably find it. We talked about Nord Stream 1 and 2. We kind of went into detail about how strategically important those are. And if you remember, Biden went ahead and shut down the our pipeline that we were going to build with Canada and went ahead and greenlit the Nord Stream 2, the continued construction and underwriting of that construction that was going to provide basically natural gas to Europe from Russia. So that, as we all know, there's a war going on in Ukraine right now. Putin had actually turned off the spigots of Nord Stream 1 back in August, I believe. So there was no active gas that I know of actually flowing through there. There was probably still, obviously there was still gas in there. But somebody decided to go blow it up. Nobody even talked from the get-go. Nobody talked about this being an accident. From the get-go, there's been an accident. It was always, this was an act of sabotage. I don't want to just go on an hour-long monologue here, which I could. There's just so much to say about this. But I guess the first thing, I'll go to Roger first, is who would do this, Roger? Like, whose interest does it serve to, first of all, what's the media narrative right now that you're hearing on the news about who did this? We all know, but I'll let you say it. And number two, would it be in that party's best interest to sabotage a pipeline providing natural gas that Russia is selling Europe? Okay. In whose interest is it to blow that up? And if it's the Russians, I want to hear a really good reason why it's in their best interest to blow it up.
No, and you beat me to the punch. I mean, you're hearing all of a sudden, oh, Russia, they did it. Because everything's Russia. It doesn't matter what it is. Russia. Whenever you don't like it, it's just Russia's fault. And it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The only like 1% piece that makes sense to me is that it gives them a reason to just not send any natural gas to Europe. So maybe if diplomacy and negotiations with the Ukraine go well during the wintertime, because obviously it's going to be very cold in Europe, they have a reason not to continue the flow of natural gas because they're going to make their money selling to India. They're going to make their money selling to China and a couple other places. But that's like a 1%. It goes back to, everybody forgets this. The internet was around back then, but what happened during the Biden interviews, during the Biden debate? We just wouldn't let that happen. Now, I'll tell you this. I am not privy to any other information outside of what we see on the news and some of the open source stuff. It's kind of funny. The 22nd Mew was out in that area, like literally over the spot 24 hours prior. Again, not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just telling you what the movements are. And so it just makes you wonder. It's like, okay, from the European side, you obviously don't want to have that happen because you need the natural gas. There really is no reason for Russia, just when you look at the monetary piece, for Russia to blow that thing up, because they do make money off that stuff, right? But so then when you look at it and you say, well, who actually benefits off this? I mean, us, Great Britain, maybe a handful of other countries. That's it. And when you look at some of the correlation of movement, I mean, again, not a black helicopter guy, not a conspiracy guy. Although, like Josh mentions, the difference between conspiracy and truth is like what, 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 days, because you don't even hear about it anymore. So Russia immediately came out, and again, this is not a pro-Russia thing. I get it. It's the public relations and the media spin and politics, but they immediately get on and say, "Hey, we need to have an investigation about this." What was crazy was the U.S. was quiet. Like they said nothing for, I had to be 24, 48 hours, because Luke was all pumped up. He was like, "Oh, this is World War III. This is the start of a war. We got to record tonight. We got to record tonight." Well, then you hear nothing from the American media outlet. You hear nothing from the White House. I think finally somebody asked a question and it was like, "Oh, we need to get to the bottom of this." And then it just went days. Russia had already gone to the UN, I think, and said, "Hey, we need an investigation. It needs to be full and open, yada, yada, yada." They're saying, crappy rhetoric. But the US didn't respond to any of it. And then I think it was like 5, 6 days later that the US finally came out and said, "Yeah, we need to look into this." So I mean, that to me is very, very telling. And when you look at even now, actually outside of the first day when you brought it up, where there was a couple of hits right there, and we were, all three of us were kind of bouncing back and forth trying to figure out who did this, the motivations. You really don't hear about it anymore. You don't hear about it at all. And so it tells me at that point it's being suppressed, it's being squashed. When you look at the motivations, I think we obviously have a motivation to destroy that thing, right? I think you look at some of our allies, they have motivations to destroy that thing. But from Europe, I don't see any motivations from there. And I don't see any strong motivations from Russia to blow that thing up. I don't know, Josh, what do you see?
When when it first happened, and Luke, was like, "Hey, we got to record, like, because this is, this is how world wars start," and he was spot on. And of course, what made me immediately, you know, say, "Okay, I don't think, you know, I don't think that." The Russians did it was, you look at it, like you said, they don't benefit from it. They don't have a lot of they don't have a lot of negotiating items to come to the table with. That was one of them. And Luke, you're correct. It was already shut down. The Russians shut that down a couple months ago, and that was one of the few bargaining chips that Russia had to be able to come to the table, because it gets cold in Europe in the winter. It gets cold, and we all know that Germany, and the Baltics and a lot of other countries were heavily reliant on Russian natural gas for energy. The Germans laughed at Trump, at the UN when Trump brought it up, and now Germany, turned around and had to pay, billions to Russia for for energy. Um, but you look at it and you're like, okay, why would the Russians blow up that pipeline? And people were like, "Well, it was inactive. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter. It was inactive. Like it didn't. They weren't going to have to build it to turn it back on. They go and they turn some wrenches, flip some switches, and that thing's back on. And guess what? They're getting money. They're getting concessions from Europe. So I don't see what benefit Russia would have if they blew it up. Like it doesn't make sense. Now, for the United States or its allies, right? Um, Blowing it up, like there's a lot of benefit, because where is Europe going to get gas for the winter from? Well, guess where they can get it from now? They can get it from the United States. They can get it from our allied countries. Um, and Roger, you said the 22nd Mu was in the area. Um, last year, it was last year. I'd say, yeah, last year. When the whole, there's a lot of talk about Hunter and Burisma and everything in the Ukraine. And then the war, then the Russia invaded more of Ukraine, than it did in 2014, obviously. And we started pouring money in there. We started, pouring weapons in there. We've got soft troops, on the ground. Um, None of that is about, democracy and, fighting communism and fighting Russia. That is all about natural gas deals. That's all about laundering money. That's all about, billions and billions in the military industrial complex and, weapons, from everything from small arms to MLRS to, missiles. It's everything. So it doesn't make sense that Russia would blow up that pipeline. It makes a lot of sense of why the U.S. would do it. And you know what else told me that the U.S. did it is, like you said, right? They were quiet. We were very quiet for a while, right? And then Blinken came out and said we did not do that. And it was like, oh, we did it, right? And then Brennan, former CIA director, went on some, morning talk show like that, and said that it was a Russian talking point. Anybody who said that the United States did it, that was a Russian talking point. It was like, oh, okay, well, that makes me like I'm doubling down that the U.S. did it now, because this is the same guy who came out and said that, Trump colluded with the Russians to win the 2016 election, which has been proven patently false time and time again. And now we have the Brookings Institute just published an article on a list, and I'm kind of hoping we make this list. It lists out 18 podcasts that are spreading Kremlin talking points by saying that the United States may have been the ones to blow up the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. So maybe after this we can get on that list. What you got, Roger?
So real quick to throw in what you're just adding to. So I missed this interview, but Jeffrey Sachs, he's a world-renowned American professor of economics. He was one of the top 100 most influential people in Time Magazine, which accolades they are what they are. But I guess he's on Bloomberg and brings up the fact that, yeah, it looks like it was sabotaged by the U.S. and Bloomberg immediately pulled him off the air. So it's that type of, they pulled him off the air. And then when you look at, I don't know if I was young and this was during the Reagan years, but we do have a track record of blowing up Soviet pipelines. Just saying. I mean, you can go look back at 1982. This has happened before, right?
Yeah. Well, you take a look at it too. And that was the last thing I was going to say, is you look at capability, intent, and targeting, right? How many countries, because, when you go look at it, the pipeline rests a little over 300 feet below sea level on the seafloor of the Baltic Sea. All right. Who has the capability, like the no shit capability, to sabotage that pipeline at that depth, right? Now, yeah, there's some countries out there. And again, it might not have been the U.S., but I promise you it was U.S. enabled. If it wasn't us directly, we actually enabled it. And then you look at the intent, who would have the intent to do it. And then you look at, who has historically targeted things like that in the past. And it's like, man, that sounds kind of sounds like us. We meet all three of those criteria. So we just got to look.
Yeah, it's a interesting situation. What didn't occur to me that night, I was like, man, this is a big deal. Was, well, how difficult is it going to be to repair that? I don't know. Can that be repaired in a week? Can that be repaired in a month? I don't know. It's just pipe. It's just a pipeline. So surely it can't be that difficult to repair. I don't know. But, one of the things that struck me was how the environmentalists definitely weren't up in arms about it. And that just shows you how shallow that Karen movement is that, when Deepwater Horizon happened, boy, everybody knew about that. Everybody was up in arms because you could see it. There's oil slicks, on the shores of Texas and all over the Gulf of Mexico. And boy, if it's ugly, we care. But man, that was a lot of methane dumped into the atmosphere. A lot. I mean, the numbers are staggering. exactly how much was dumped into the atmosphere. But nobody cared. Nobody blinked an eye about that, which I thought was interesting. The answer to 9 out of 10 questions is usually money, right? So I'm not going to forget about this. I'm going to be watching real close on what other pipeline companies are going to get contracts in that particular part of the world, so on and so forth. I know if I was an enterprising superpower or even a regional, not even power, but regional or country with interests in the region, and I knew there was a pipeline down there, I might just go put some, hard to detect explosives down there to use on a rainy day. I mean, it's not that difficult to do what was done. You know what I'm saying? It's not that hard. Now, for those of you, especially Darren, he gets mad when we use too many acronyms. The 22nd MEU is the Marine Expeditionary Unit. That's what those guys are talking about. They were all over that area. There were helicopters flying in that airspace shortly before. I think it was the Swedes or the Danish detected the actual
Swedes.
Yeah.
leaks.
And
There were leaks at first,
yeah.
but yeah, that Jeffrey Sachs interview was interesting. It was he let him go for a little while. The Bloomberg guy let him go, and Jeffrey Sachs was broadcasting from Vienna. And when that anchor kind of tore into him a little bit for even suggesting it was the United States, Jeffrey Sachs was completely taken aback. He's like, "Oh, I guess I'm not allowed to mention that." And this guy's a scholar, like he's a smart dude. And he's like, "Okay, well, I take that as a personal affront. I'm going to explain to you, Barney style, why all direction, all arrows point toward the U.S. doing this. Definitely a covert act, right? The difference between clandestine and covert is clandestine is like the Iranian hostage rescue. That was supposed to be, if they would have gotten the country, that was supposed to be a clandestine type operation. It happened. Nobody knew it was going to happen. It happened. Everybody knows the U.S. did it. A covert action is a pipeline blows up and nobody knows who the hell did it. So if the U.S. or Russia or whoever wants something to happen somewhere in the world and there be a question about who it is, we know something happened. We just don't know who the hell would do this. This is a classic example of covert operations. So you see all your Call of Duty and stuff like that, covert ops. That's what covert means. Something happened. Nobody knows who did it. No, well, everybody's got an idea, but man, this is a covert op on a level, like it's a high level. So that's what I was freaking out about at first. I was like, man, if Biden did this, it's not a ballsy move. It is so dumb. It's so dumb to take this kind of risk. And there were probably people back when Reagan blew up that pipeline in Siberia who were saying the same thing I'm saying right now. And I hope I have the presence of mind that, if DeSantis is the next president, he does something dumb like this, I won't be like, yeah, DeSantis. Hell yeah, show those Ruskies. But there's more to it than just us and Russia. Think of the average German citizen. This is what was going through my mind that night. I'm like, they're not going to have any gas. They're going to be cold. They're going to be shivering. Guy's going to be watching his family shivering in the dark, being pissed at whoever did this. They cut off our gas supply. It's not going to be about Russia anymore. Now it's about the U.S., or if it's found out, the U.S. did it. Well, now it's about the U.S. cutting off my gas supply, not Russia. And I agree with both you guys. It's like, you have a bargaining chip in your hand. It's right here. It's in your hand. Hey, I've got something you really want. Don't kill my wife. I've got this pin. This is what you want more than anything else. Don't kill my wife. Don't kill my family. They're like, oh, I don't know. I might still kill him. So I break the pin and throw it into the fire. No, what are you going to do, bitch? It's like, no, dude, you just broke and killed your own bargaining chip. That's why it doesn't make any sense why Russia did this. It makes zero sense. But everybody says, oh, the Russians are, chess masters and things like that. They really know what they're doing. I'm sure there's another explanation, but I'd really love to hear it.
And see, that's what kills me is when these people, these same people, it's the whole like, an AR-15 is a weapon of war. And then in the very next breath, they say your AR-15s can't do anything against the military. It's like, well, I mean, okay, then why can't I have it? If it can't do anything against the military, why are you wearing it? These same people who are like, Russia's are, it's like we say, like a 7D chess, it's 10D chess. It was like, dude, they couldn't conquer Ukraine. Like they couldn't drive. Like they literally are taping GPS, handheld GPSs, old Garmin, old school, like 2006 GPSs to the windshield of fighter jets. And that's supposed to be the guys who are, the master chess players. And they're, no, it was totally them, man. They're so good at this. It's like, I'm not buying it. Like I'm absolutely not buying it. It doesn't. None of that makes sense. And then you have, I don't know if you guys heard this. I know I texted it out. Did you guys see where we're talking to Poland's president about the possibility of placing nukes, U.S. nukes in Poland?
Yep.
And it's like, are you, Mike, are you crazy? Did everybody forget nobody read the AAR from 13 Days? Like we're just skipping that, huh? I
But
read
let me
that.
ask you this though. Let me ask you this on that, because this kind of goes hand in hand, and I'll throw this out to both of you. So forget about the reasoning behind it, whatever. So let's say we're the ones who did it, and Russia truly suspects we did it, not just the empty rhetoric and the bloviating they're spewing right now at the UN and wherever else. But let's say we did it. You've seen the lack of response from Russia. Does that give us a leg up and give us some type of peek into the Russian window on how weak they really are right now?
I
Because
think,
they're
yeah.
obviously preoccupied, right, with the Ukraine, and again, when you look at Twitter, it's Ukraine's winning the war, and Luke, you brought this up. This is going to be a protracted thing, and at the end of the day, if you end up losing 4 regions, I don't know how you consider that winning the war, but does it give you a sliver into the mindset and the disposition of Russia to where maybe you can say, hey, we're going to put nukes in Poland because you know what? An act of sabotage like this, we just blew up your pipeline. You did nothing, probably because you can't do anything right now. Does it give us a leg up?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it could, right? If that's the case, sure. It gives you, a little bit of insight into the enemy's true capability or lack thereof. But, at what price did that insight, this horrible grammar, at what price did that cost? Uh, I don't think it was worth it to get that kind of insight. We have this thing called the CIA. This is their full-time job to do these analyses on the enemy's intentions and capabilities and things like that. In my opinion, a move like this, if that's the case, is just too risky in my opinion, because unless all the European countries, specifically Germany, are on board 100% with this, and all of their politicians, from the prime minister all the way down, would be like, yep, that's something we had to do. Okay, maybe, but I guarantee you that's not the case. They're not involved. If the US did do it, they're not involved in this covert op. So that's the risk I'm worried about. Because what is Putin's intention? We've said this for over a year now. There's strategic goals. There's a few of them, but there's like 3 or 4. And one of them is the dissolution or weakening of NATO. And if NATO, I'm telling you, I wish I was over in Europe now so I could kind of get a pulse on this stuff. Like, what does the public think about this? Because, man, I think Jeffrey Sachs said it. He's like, your average European on the street knows the U.S. did it. Man, that's bad. And maybe, I could see that being your 7D chess there, Josh. Is like, okay, Russia's like, we're going to blow it up, and the Europeans will think that it was the U.S., and that will fracture NATO. Okay, that's a little bit away, too far from Occam's razor to me. That's why I think it's just incompetence. It's like, did you people not realize that you're going to alienate Europe if they find out this was you? Europe wanted this. They did. We've talked about that. We were saying Europeans are dumb as hell because they want this. They wanted the Nord Stream 1 and 2. They had Nord Stream 1. They wanted Nord Stream 2. So it's like the risk to me of alienating Europe and fracturing NATO, and regardless of what I believe NATO should or shouldn't be or stuff like that, I'm talking about the leadership and just the poor decision making. The incompetence overall is breathtaking to me. And now we're one of the 17 that are echoing, Kremlin talking points, right? I mean, it's Josh is chomping. Go ahead, Josh.
No, and it's and just to address the whole Kremlin talking points real quick, that stuff is nonsense, right? Because at the end of the day, if somebody says the sky is blue, it doesn't matter who they are. Like, the sky is blue. Like, that's a fact. Like, it's a fact, right? Water is wet. Like, I don't care who says it. You know, Ayatollah Khomeini could say water is wet, and people, and you say, well, yeah, water is wet. They'd be like, oh my God, you're spreading Iranian, talking points. It's like, no, it's like, again, it goes back to, you have Putin. He has played his hand in Ukraine, right? I mean, they're basically, with their de facto draft, or, they're snatching military age males, they're snatching mams off the street in Russia to go fight in Ukraine. Russia, it did not go the way that Russia wanted it to go, I don't think, because I think Russia wanted the whole kit and caboodle. So you've got somebody who is on the ropes militarily already, in Ukraine. He's being embarrassed on the world stage. He's not in good health. This is, probably his, this is probably going to be his last, I don't know that Putin lives another 10 years. Right. And if you look back at Putin, the way he talked about, all of the way he talked about Stalin, the way he talked about Khrushchev, he is very concerned about his legacy. He is very concerned about, how, he's going to be viewed a century from now, in Russian history. So you take this guy who, like I said, he's overplayed his hand militarily, that's all he's got. He can't come to the table now and say, well, I'm going to turn off I'm going to just shut down all the energy, because his pipelines, the pipeline's gone. So that took a bargaining chip off the table. So what does he have left? What did we leave this guy with, to really, try and bring Europe to heal? You only left him with nuclear weapons, right? And the supposed crazed madman. Everybody describes him as a crazed madman, and it's like, okay, so, talking about the agency doing an announce, okay, so we're going to leave the crazed madman with one option, and that option's nuclear weapons. Like,
Dude,
again, and, Luke, you talk about, you're talking about him wanting to fracture NATO and stuff, and absolutely, I mean, that's absolutely one of Russia's strategic goals. And like you said, we talked about this before, and you look at the protests that have been happening. Even at the end of September, or kind of all throughout September. I mean, there was a protest I think it was in Prague. There was like 70,000 people, and they were protesting the European Union and NATO. And it's going to get worse. I don't think it's going to get any better. Especially as people get cold. Germans are going to get cold. Germans are going to get angry. And then what happens when Germany gets angry? They grab their weapons and they march east.
I got one more thing about the nukes in Poland. Okay. And I just don't get it. Again, this is a thing we hammer home over and over. Why the hell are we so concerned with Russia? Why? Why are we doing this? What is it? And the answer is money, probably, and pipelines and all this stuff through Ukraine. That's why we're there. We didn't care about Georgia when the same thing happened there. It's because there's really nothing up there in those mountains. Those poor people. They have great food. Yeah, nobody cares. But it's like, hey, I got an idea. How about instead of focusing all these dangerous, covert operations, stuff like this that could kick off a no joke nuclear exchange, whether it's tactical or whatever, not even talking about ICBMs, but, a real nuclear exchange. Why are we messing around in Europe against a country that's, economies the size of Pennsylvania with nuclear weapons when let's not talk about that. Let's talk about putting some nukes in the Philippines. How about that? Let's focus where the real threat is. I mean, it's just, dude, I'm so sick of this, man. Treat Russia like what it is. Dude, you're a third-rate superpower. You know what? You can either get on the team or you can be shunned, and whatever. I don't know, Roger. It's very, very frustrating. The missteps that are being taken. Anthony Blinken is a complete idiot. Avril Lavigne, Avril Haines, whatever her name is, they're all morons. I have no faith whatsoever. That's why when I see the Nord Stream pipeline blow up, I'm like, oh, some moron did this. Some moron greenlit this bullshit covert operation with so much risk.
Yeah, I mean, look at Iran. I mean, we talked about this ad nauseum. Well, why aren't we taking advantage of that? This is twice now, and it goes back to, look, here's the deal: that the folks on the world stage, and we've both been around the world, and a lot of our listeners have been around the world. They know what's going on. We get into the weeds a lot in the politics and Democrats and Republicans, and on one hand, you can make an argument that they're at opposite ends of the spectrum, but on another hand, you can say with a lot of issues, they're both the same party, they're both the same people. But they know the deal. When you talk to other world leaders, here's what I know, and this is a very small look into this. So I'm not going to dissect all of history, but I know two other regions of Ukraine were taken by Russia, and it wasn't during a Republican presidency. I know that there was a grassroots demonstration in Iran that, again, we failed to act on. And again, I'm sure some spook will sit out there. You guys don't know what the hell you're talking about. Yeah, you're probably right. Maybe I see what the end result is, right? When you look at Iran, and we had two grassroots demonstrations, and I know what presidencies those happened under when we didn't take action. We've said this is at least the third time we've said this, but I remember the first one with Iran. Like, I was for sure. I'm like, man, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning, and the Iranian regime is going to be overthrown. I was so sure of it. And then it's just like crickets. Hey, whose presidency did the Arab Spring happen under? Just kind of curious. And then you've got the Saudis, right? So we do the fist bump, and the Saudis and Russia say, guess what? We're going to go ahead and cut. Oil production by 2 million barrels a day. And then they came right out and said it, because we need to keep barrels above $90 or oil $90 a barrel or above. That's a fact. So you can call it what you want, left, right, center, or whatever. It's like Josh just said, hey, the sky is blue. So regardless who says it, this and that, I'm just telling you what I'm observing. So for the folks out there listening, as we come into the midterms, I guess now is a good time to shift this thing to the midterms, or we can hit up, whatever else. But we talk about the importance of voting. I mean, here's the thing. I don't care what party's in power, what the outcome is. This, regardless of who is in power or who was in power, within the last 21 months, hey, it's time to vote them out. I couldn't care less. If we had Republican-controlled Senate, Republican-controlled presidency, and whatever, hey, it's time to pick somebody else. Because there is no way in your right mind, in my right mind, that I could say, yeah, I want more of the last 20 months. I don't know that you can name one success. And then now we get to the point, Josh tweeted out an article earlier where President Biden, which, by the way, he's Puerto Rican, if you guys didn't know. So real quick on
I was waiting for him to play Despacito again.
Dude, come on, man. I mean, to use history, you can't make this stuff up. So a tidbit, don't let me lose my train of thought here. Well, I'm gonna lose it anyway. I'm gonna go down this road. But when Biden lived in Delaware during his childhood, young adult, and growing up, do you know the percentage of Delaware that consider themselves of Puerto Rican descent? 0.39%. That totals to 2,154. So I'm not sure how he classifies himself as a Puerto Rican, and I say that in jest. He said he had the Puerto Rican political upbringing or whatever. Like, so what? Like, you need one Puerto Rican kid that lived around the block? That's what you consider? But it just goes to pandering, right? It's pandering. It's the same thing with Kamala Harris. She can be Indian, she can be Asian, she can be black, she can be whatever she wants, whatever you need to fit that mold of the audience that you're talking to. But when you look at the midterms coming up, and I kind of want to get your guys' feel on this as we go week to week on this thing, or every other week, or however we end up doing it. But there's no way I would want to continue what we've had for the last 20 or 21 months, because I can't name a single success. So Biden comes out today and says, hey, I'm going to pardon all the federal marijuana offenses or convictions, right? So let me break this down for people. When they say that, and immediately everybody, all over Twitterverse and this and that, and we can get government jobs again, and we can do this. No. Again, you're just pandering because nobody knows the details behind it. It's like, first of all, a pardon doesn't mean that you weren't guilty. Generally speaking, and I'm no lawyer, but I can do a little gurgling here and there. Generally speaking, it's like, hey, that just means that we're not going to continue to punish you anymore, i.e. jail time, prison time. And the only places, I think federally, outside of like DC, I don't think there's anybody in federal prison for just marijuana possession. I heard that earlier today on one of the other news channels. It's always with something else. So it doesn't get rid of your guilty conviction. It's also only federal, so it doesn't mean city, state, county, your local yokels down there. Doesn't get rid of the crime, and the total amount of people that it will impact is estimated to be 6,500. But people are going to see it as legalized marijuana. Now, to me, the most important part of it was the back piece of that of his speech when he said, "Hey, I've directed, I don't know if it was the FDA or a couple of people he mentioned to relook at how we classify marijuana." Now we know we've had a whole episode about this, Schedule 1 drug or whatever it is. But that to me is the bigger thing, right? That's the bigger issue because that could have implications federally, whether it's legal or not, because it doesn't matter whether the states do it. But I just say going into the midterms now, and it's interesting because we were talking about this before, and I went back and forth with Josh. It's pretty interesting because we talked about the GOP's hatred of Trump. And I actually had some notes here that the Democrats, it's party over country. And for the GOP, the establishment, it's hatred of Trump over country. And there is a very good shot now based on polling. And we're not just talking about a poll, we're talking about the trend, overall trend of polling. There's a very good shot that the GOP actually takes the Senate. When you look at Pennsylvania, Oz is within striking distance. When you look at Georgia, Warnock is either even, and some polls they've got him behind a point or two. Some polls they've got him up a point or two, but the trends are definitely going towards Herschel Walker. When you look out here in Arizona, they're talking about Peter Thiel, who backed what's his name up in Ohio, has now pulled his funding out of there because JD Vance. He's like, hey, JD Vance is going to win Ohio, so now I can pull my money out of there and throw it out here behind Blake Masters in Arizona. Nevada, even CNN now is calling Nevada a toss-up. And when you look at your conservative groups, they're saying, hey, Nevada's red. Nevada's going to pull a red senator out of that place. So here's what's amazing to me is that the GOP may actually gain majority seats in the Senate without the GOP doing anything. It's really, if it all pans out, right? There's a lot to be said, and there's a lot that can still happen between now and then. But if it pans out the way the trend is going, and you still got an entire month to go in October, but the GOP could actually take the Senate, which they're going to take the House. That's going to happen. It's just a matter of how great the majority is. But the GOP could actually take the Senate and not even do anything to take the Senate. And I think at that point, it could be very telling on what happens in 2024. If the GOP runs the table in all these states, and these are Trump-backed candidates, we talked about this before, does that give him more fire to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I do need to run in 2024. And as a party, the establishment, and Trump's been going after McConnell, Trump's gone after his wife, and now you don't even hear McConnell pushing back. It actually makes me wonder, and maybe I've given him too much credit, and I'll kick it over to you, Josh, to get your thoughts on it. Maybe I'm giving McConnell too much credit, but part of me sees that McConnell kind of sees this wave going. He's like, wow, if the midterms turn out and we actually get 51, 52, 53 Senate seats, that Trump train may be a little bit stronger than what I thought it was. Now, I still believe there are regions where it's extremely strong, right? And there are regions where, hey, maybe you don't want Trump out here. I'm actually surprised with Georgia. I mean, and maybe I shouldn't be because Herschel Walker, the guy, especially when you look at college football, you look at sports, that type of stuff. I mean, he's a big time name down there, very involved in the community, does a lot of charity work down there, along with some other stuff. But it was, at least in my opinion, that Trump, hey, maybe you just sit out the Georgia piece because he didn't seem to be doing very well. But Josh, do you see, I guess we're on opposite ends of the country. Do you see any type of momentum that you feel anecdotally, right? That is like shifting to the right, shifting towards maybe a conservative, majority in the Senate?
Not really. Um, what I see and what I kind of feel on this side, in the Mid Atlantic, and I try and keep track of a lot of the local news and editorials, especially not just for my area, but for like South Carolina and up into Virginia, and stuff, and it's very disjointed. There's no there doesn't seem to be any level of synchronization between GOP candidates, messaging and stuff, and which is fine to a point, right? Because I mean, what's concerned, what's concerning for people, here locally, is it concerning, might not be concerning for people up in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia. right? But you're still going to have, right? You still have the party platform. You still have, those. I'm going to go out on a limb and just say, for the sake of argument, those conservative GOP, talking points and ideals. When it comes to the GOP, I'm not even counting the House as, you know, hours as flipping the house until it actually happens, because I don't, it's kind of like Barack. I'm like Barack, with Joe when it comes to, my view on the GOP. Never underestimate their ability to F it up. So I don't know. You got here in North Carolina, Ted Budd is running against Sherry Beasley. It's the feel that I get. It's close. Like it's going to be, it's really going to be close, because you have, Sherry Beasley. You have a lot of red counties, big red counties here in North Carolina, and they kind of overpower. They can overpower some of the smaller, more red counties. And Ted Budd really hurt himself in 2020 when he supported COVID lockdowns. When he came out and said, "Yep, I support locking people in their homes and stuff like that," he lost a lot of support for that, as he should have. And so I know some people, aren't necessarily back on that Ted Budd train. He runs around and he talks. He's a Trump candidate. Um, but it's like, hey man, your actions spoke a lot louder than what you're saying right now. Back in 2020 when you were local and you were telling me that I couldn't go to the grocery store. People still remember that. So which guy, Roger?
So I kind of want your opinion on this, and both of you, because I don't know what my answer is yet. Do you think the ballots get split? So, like when you look at here in Arizona, I just specifically Arizona, when I look at the support that Katie Hobbs has versus Carrie Lake, it seems that Carrie Lake's got all the support. So she's going to draw out a lot of voters for her candidacy as governor. Blake Masters doesn't have quite the support yet. Our attorney general has pretty good support. I say the conservative GOP Republican candidate for attorney general. So what happens? Do you think? And I don't know how it is in North Carolina as far as how that support goes, but you take like a Carrie Lake who may pull the popular vote in Arizona. Do those voters continue to go down the ballot and just vote red and vote for a Blake Masters that's losing in the polls by probably 4 or 5 points to a Mark Kelly? Because the polls take, when they ask about this, they ask individually, right? Who would you vote for? Mark Kelly, Blake Masters. But let's face it, out here, nobody is voting for Carrie Lake and then Mark Kelly. That's not happening. You're either voting one way or the other. So do you think that ballot gets split, or do you think they just don't vote, or what do you think?
It comes down to energy, dude. There is no energy in this, as much as they're trying to push it with the marijuana stuff, all the marijuana talk. The left is not energized. The Democrat Party is not energized for this election. So, to answer your question, no, I don't think it'll be split. The more time moves on, because I live in a deep red area, very, very red. Very few Democrats around here, and the ones that are, how it is in a deep red area. The ones who are blue are very outspoken about it. It's like, yeah, you know what? Okay, yeah, you're different. Congratulations. Go back home and put up your veto sign or whatever you're going to do. Veto with the bad teeth. But yeah, man, but the Republican Party right now is energized, very energized. Not even the Republican Party. That's the wrong way to put it. People who generally vote Republican are very energized, much like they were. What year was that? 2008? No, 2010. Was it 2010 where we retook the House and Senate? I can't remember, but
Yeah.
it's when
2010.
So 2010. I get that 2010 feeling this time because the economy is so bad. It's just so bad that people that tend to vote Democrat probably aren't going to go because they're just not energized. They're waiting for 2024 to see what's going to happen then. So I don't think it's going to split. I don't think it's going to. I think I'm going to go back to what we were saying months ago. Before everybody started getting nervous about the Senate, and then they're like, "Oh, I just don't know if we're going to take the House either." dude, the energy's just not there on the other side. It's just not. So I think a lot more Republican voters are going to turn out like they did in 2010. What do you think, Josh?
So, I'll speak for this area. It comes down, like Luke said, it comes down to energy and it comes down to the candidates, right? Again, like nobody is going, nobody's going to go in there and vote for Ted Budd and then come out and vote for a Sherry Beasley type candidate in another position. They're just not going to do it because they are so far on either side of the political spectrum that nobody's going to do that. I think if you had more moderates from both parties running, I think you would have to kind of factor in, okay, this might be a split ticket. I think the majority of people that are going in are they're voting down ballot, and that's going to be that. And Luke's right, man. The energy. You have a lot of people who went out and voted in 2020. The economy was good, man. Right before COVID shut everything down. Right there at the end of 20, they had the election. Like the economy was good. People got out. And a lot of people got out not because they wanted to vote. They weren't excited to vote for Joe Biden, but they were less excited to vote for Donald Trump. So they either didn't go or they voted for Biden. I think this time, we've talked about this, repeatedly. It's like everybody, regardless of political party, puts gas in their car twice a week, and they feel that pain twice a week. Twice a week, they were reminded how bad things are, and gas is getting ready to go up again. And by the way, if you guys haven't filled up, you probably won't want to go fill up first thing in the morning. OPEC cut production. Joe Biden went over there, hat in hand, to the Saudis. Tried to get them to boost production. Saudis like, yep, sounds great. They cut production by 2 million barrels a day. And then Joe Biden is toying with the idea, came out today, of putting a moratorium on all offshore drilling. And so it's like, and then
Great timing.
Great timing. And then it's some crazy, mathematician. Maybe it's the Common Core math. They ran on this. He released 10 million barrels from the strategic oil reserves to combat gas prices from going back up. And it's like, hey man, how many did you release last time? It brought gas down by what, 2 cents for what, 24 hours? Like that's not, I think you're going to see over here, in the next, probably the next 30 days, gas prices are going back up. There's not a whole lot that, the government is going to be able to do to control that. Especially when you're talking about, cutting production. That's going to just drive the gas prices up, and you're 30 days away. You're knocking on the door of the midterms, and gas prices are getting ready to go up again. That's disaster for an incumbent. If the economy is shitty, it's a disaster for the incumbent, generally speaking. I just, they were hoping. I'm seeing a lot, and again, this is on Twitter, since I can't get on Facebook, a whole lot, because of my current status. But you see on Twitter, a lot of people they're calling it Rovember, where they're gonna, take, avenge the Supreme Court ruling. Dude, that was in June. Like that was in June. That, that anger that people had, about that on the left, a lot of that's dissipated by now. And which when Lindsey Graham came out and was like, yeah, we're gonna introduce a bill that's gonna put a 15-week moratorium on abortion. It was like, what are you doing? Like let it go, leave it alone. And so it's, yeah, and you're right. It's way down. It's number 6 on people's list of things that people care about. Crime is now number 3. On the list. And again, if it costs too much money for me to put gas in my car and I'm getting carjacked in broad daylight, at the mall, like I really don't care, that Karen down the street, can't get her, at birth abortion. It's, I don't see it, it's a long-winded way to say, I don't see the energy on the other side either. But again, uh, I don't underestimate the ability for the GOP to F things up. Um, I just, I don't know, man. You know me, man. I'm a doom and gloom, glasses half empty type person on things like this.
Well, they're running kind of far behind of effing it up, in my opinion, because I think that things have a momentum of their own at this point. And I think the momentum's set unless, yeah, I think the momentum's set. I mean, this isn't a presidential, so what do we have? 30 something days? What is it? Is it 30 days? 29? It's pretty close. So
Well,
it's
it's
a month
30 as
away.
of 30 as of today because it's November
Okay.
8th, right? Yeah, and
So
today's no, yeah,
31,
32
whatever.
days.
We're within a month. We're about a month away. And man, this, October surprise better come quick. And if the marijuana thing today was their October surprise, man, I just, the crime, Roger put economy, inflation, crime, man, that's high on the list. I'll tell you. Josh wants to say something else. Go ahead, Josh.
Sorry, I was just going to say that the marijuana thing, yeah, the October surprise. So the Huffington Post just tweeted an article. That helps exactly 0 people because right now 0 people are in federal prison for simple possession of marijuana, and it only scrubs the criminal records of approximately 6,500 people who are already out of prison, and stuff. So that is literally the only people that helps.
So I don't know if you were around. We actually covered that about 45 minutes ago. But thanks again, Josh, for reiterating those numbers.
But you didn't say 0 were in prison, though, currently.
Yeah, I did. Check the game tape.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Whatever.
I wasn't listening either. So I want to change the subject too quickly. I just want to ask Roger, because Roger keeps track of, well, Josh too. Did you guys see Ketanji Brown Jackson's supposed own of everyone? It's just, so I read that and I had to read through it like 2 or 3 times. So Josh, I'll kick this to you. Roger even said, Josh. So basically what she was doing, I don't know. I had to read through the article. I read through a few of them, and it was these articles are, Washington Post and a lot of super left leaning. We're like, you go slay queen, yes, tell them how it is. And so I had to read through it 2 or 3 times to understand exactly what she was talking about. What she was trying to do was take an originalist stance on the Constitution to try to own the conservative justices. But what I saw in her words, and Josh, maybe you can expound on this a little bit more. What I saw in her words were definitely, if we had 9 justices on the Supreme Court who had her viewpoints on things, race relations and racism and all these things in this country would take literally 100-year step backwards. Because under her lens, but based on what I read, under her lens, everything should be examined under. There is no such thing as a colorblind society, nor should there ever be such a thing as a colorblind society. And I found it offensive. I found it gross and offensive, what she was saying. So maybe you can expand on it a little more if you're prepared to do that. I kind of dropped this one on you, but you want to talk to that?
Put me on the spot. Yeah. So 0 preparation went into this. So I have to do this kind of off the cuff. So she was specifically, so she's actively on the bench now, hearing cases, and I was wondering real quick before I jump into what she was saying and about the 14th Amendment. There is already, I was wondering how long it was going to take, but there's already rumblings about her having to hold the door for the 8 for the other 8 justices, right? And so that has always been the duties of the most junior justice, is you have to hold the door, when for the other justices, when they enter and leave, and and stuff. There are already people like, well, that's racist, right, to make the black lady hold the door. So it's ridiculous. I was wondering how long that was going to take. It didn't take long. It didn't even take 48 hours. So anyway, so what she was talking about, so there, it was, I don't, I can't remember which case it was that they were hearing oral arguments for, but it was a case out of Alabama. And so it was, specifically speaking about the 14th Amendment. And what she said about the 14th Amendment was, it was stunning. Like, it was truly stunning. And you're right. So she tried to take this, this textualist, viewpoint on it. And so she cited the report of the Joint Committee on Reconstruction from 1866. And it was basically, from the lawmakers, from the, the legislators who drafted the 14th Amendment. It says that report says that the entire point of the amendment was to secure rights of the freed former slaves. Right? The 14th Amendment was only written to secure rights for freed former slaves. Then it just goes on, the legislator, who introduced that amendment said that unless the Constitution should restrain them, these states will all, I fear, keep up the discrimination and crush to death the hated freedman. Speaking of slave, she said that's not a race neutral or race blind idea in terms of the remedy. So, like you said, Luke, she's viewing the 14th Amendment was solely to secure, rights for freed slaves. So if you do that, if you look at that, the 14th Amendment through that lens, then yeah, you do set back race relations, a century in in this country. When you really look at the 14th Amendment, the 14th Amendment wasn't only to secure, rights of free former slaves. The 14th Amendment was, hey, we are done looking at things, through a racial lens. Like, this applies to everybody equally, not just freed former slaves. But that's not her viewpoint. I thought, and the Supreme Court is set to hear an argument, a case on affirmative action this month. And basically race-based admissions, specifically to colleges. And I think it's Harvard, and I can't remember the other college that is, and whether those race-based admissions are constitutional. Thank God we don't have any more than one Ketanji Brown Jackson on the bench, because it would be truly crazy. I thought we had gotten past the point where people like the idea of getting government involved and making decisions based on the color of people's skins. I thought we kind of settled that. I guess not. Looks like some people want to go back to that. So I know, Roger, you've had a couple minutes to gurgle some stuff. What you got on it?
So, and you hit it on the head. What it comes down to is, I hope she applies that to every ruling that she goes into. Okay, that's great. So let's go talk about the Second Amendment, right? I mean, that's what's going to get.
That's a good one.
Yeah, because that's, and believe me, I know jack about the Supreme Court, other than I think Josh and I listened to a couple cases, and when I've seen what is it, the Harry Flint, what was that movie with Harry Flint or Larry Flint? Sorry, the Hustler magazine. I think that's what I know about, like, what actually goes on in the Supreme Court. But what I have seen is these lawyers and these attorneys go in there and they use precedents, obviously, and they use past statements of these justices in their cases. And so I think when you have a 2A case go up, which, by the way, I think I don't know if it was released today. I heard about it today for the first time. So I believe the Supreme Court, they either upheld or struck down New York's law or whatever. So basically, they can't ban guns in Times Square. They said I think they upheld the can't carry a weapon in a place of worship. They can ban that, school and government building. And I don't even know if it was government building. I think they may have said federal building, but then ruled and said, hey, you can't ban the carrying of weapons in Times Square. So as long as she holds that originalist, text and that mindset, hey, that's great. Let's go cover all of it. And and the 14th wasn't, as Josh mentioned, it wasn't just for blacks. It was for everybody. And oh, by the way, it wasn't just applicable to the federal government. A large part of the 14th was also applicable to the state government. That, oh, by the way, hey, the federal government, we can't discriminate and equal protections, this and that. But regardless, even in the state that you live in, they can no longer discriminate, or they can't discriminate. So it wasn't just for one race. It wasn't just for one ethnicity. It was for everybody. And that's the problem. You start to see this stuff come around full circle where, it's since they shifted from equality to equity, and even Kamala Harris was talking about this. They've been beating her up on the aid, right? The hurricane aid, and some of it was taken out of context. But the context to me, and I heard the whole thing, it didn't matter, because what she was saying was that aid should be based on equity. And she came right out without saying equality. It was like, because not everybody starts in the same place. Equality, which is what you want, we need to make sure that everybody ends up in the same place. And the reality of that is, you're not going to bring everybody up to the top tier. What you end up doing is you bringing that top tier down. You lower the standards to make sure that everybody else is on the same plane. And that's not what you want. And the more and more the left, the progressives, continue down this road, you get to more and more segregation. That's exactly what they want. It's more and more segregation, whereas most of us on the right, and again, you have your fringe, I get that, but most of us on the right and in the middle are just like, hey man, I don't really care. Just kind of let me do my thing, leave me alone. And I get it. There's some laws that you have to have here and there for good order and discipline, but for the most part, just stay out of my stuff. And it's not that way at all. And the right does a piss poor job about it. I mean, they do a piss poor job about it as well, because what makes their headlines are the extreme right. You take the abortion case, which is huge out here in Arizona. We talked a little bit about it last episode, where we were taking a law from the late 1800s, early 1900s, that basically say, hey man, abortions are illegal except for cases where the mother's health is in jeopardy. Now, there's a lot of nuances there, and you can parse that out however you want to. But as opposed to like the Arizona GOP, so one, the answer to that is, and I've been posting this all over Twitter, the answer to that is, you know what? Then it's up to the states and the voters of that state to legislate a change as SCOTUS intended, like they did in Kansas, right? Kansas, kept the 15-week abortion law? When they tried to like do a total ban, I think they kept 15 weeks because the voters of that state said, nope, we are going to legislate. We're going to put legislators in office that will enforce our will. And that's the whole point of the SCOTUS's ruling on that, is that, hey, here in Arizona, you want to see that change? Then vote in your legislatures that are going to change that. But the left is more about dividing, because you divide and conquer. That's what it is. It's identity politics. It goes back to what was the prime minister of Italy. They want to attack the gender. They want to attack the family. They want to attack your religion. Because what you find out, and Luke is as he picks on Josh all the time for driving his Chinese vehicle, eventually at the end of the day, everybody's wrong. We're all wrong somewhere. Josh, I think you beat Luke to the punch.
So the identity politics, the main reason behind it is because it is that group think. When you go back and you look at, all the Marxist movements of the 20th century, it's the group dynamic. It's the collective. The individual does not have rights, and that is the basis. That is the basis for communism. Um, at its core. It's the same thing with religion. It's why communism and religion can't coexist. And you're talking about bringing the bar down. A couple 2 years ago, New York University got rid of its merit-based admission program, right? To where, okay, you don't have to take the SAT or the ACT. Anybody can come in. Well, last month, a professor of organic chemistry got fired because 80 students out of his 350 student class signed a petition saying that the class was too hard. It was too difficult. They weren't passing. So they petitioned the university. And guess what? The university fired them because of 80 people, because of 80 students. And I would bet if you went and you looked at those 80 students, they probably have an IQ of, room temperature. And here they are, getting professors fired. Because it's the dumbing down of America, because the dumber you are, the easier I can control you. And that's what the left wants. They're all communists.
Well, we're all communists, and one way or another, we need to do an episode where we all call each other out for our hypocrisy and our communismness. Josh proposed that, and I'm like, yeah, it's a good idea because we were going back and forth about his Jeep and my, what was it, Black Rifle coffee? I was drinking something. Yeah, that's what it was. That was a lot of fun. Uh, yeah, dude, I want to move on to something else. How about that? I get really frustrated talking about this stuff. It's especially are we calling her KBJ or are we just saying Justice Jackson? What are we doing? I don't know, but I was taking the Josh mindset of, well, we might as well just flush that turd while it's here. I mean, and the turd being this country. It's like we got a justice on the Supreme Court making arguments like this. And hey, to be honest, national divorce, peaceful national divorce, Confederation of States, I'm good with it because her arguments. I don't know. Again, I'm not the brightest bulb. I'm not the sharpest knife. I'm not the shiniest spoon. Whatever. But I had to read her comments 3 or 4 times to understand. Okay, exactly what are you talking about here? Because, like George Carlin would say, "Huh, she sounds fairly intelligent. Oh, she's full of shit." And it's like, man, it's not that she's full of crap. It's that her views are just so rooted in race. It's all about race, and I don't know. We could go into that argument. We could delve into the logic of it and how if you pushed it the other way, because the case the Alabama case, it's Merrill versus something in the Supreme Court. It's like it's all about districting, right? And it's all about carving out districts. And the accusation is you're carving out this one based on race. You can't make an all black district. You know, you can't. And so basically, the conservative justices, and I said I'm tired of talking about this, are just like, okay, well then just carve it right down the middle and have it half black, half white. No, 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 no. We don't want to do that either. And that's kind of what the arguments are all about. It's like, well, we're going to draw them all black or all white, and we're going to see how it shakes out in the end. It's like, dude, it's so wrong. And she's making an argument for that. Now, Roger, what do you got, Roger?
Now, I was just going to add to your thing real quick. So her statement was she did not believe race being taken into account, this is quote, necessarily creates an equal protection problem.
Yeah, and those are the things I had to read over a few times and then put it in the context of the entire thing, look back at the case, and I'm like, what exactly are you trying to say? What exactly are you trying to say? Because I think one of the justices came back at her, and it was a really poorly written article I was reading. It was on some left-leaning blog with a couple, 10, 20,000 followers. And this guy's like, he owned or she owned this guy. And this guy came back and kind of said the argument I was saying. He's a lawyer, arguing in front of the Supreme Court. So he's obviously a lot more eloquent than I am. But he's like, okay, well, we should draw an all white district then. Is that okay? And then she brought in what Roger just said, and said, oh, she owned him. And it's like, God, I don't know. It's just the ideology is race. Going back to kind of what Josh was saying, it's like, our idols are groupthink, and let's get the group thinking one thing. Let's get them worked up about it. Let's make it emotional, and let's make everyone turn on each other and all think of the same thing. Homogenized type thinking. It's disgusting. I hate it. I hate that there's somebody on the Supreme Court whose thought processes are like this, and I am not going to call her stupid. That's the problem. She is not. She's intelligent. She knows what she's saying when she says these things. She's an ideological thinker. She's not an originalist. She was trying to use some kind of twisted originalist type thought using, papers and essays that those framers wrote to try to own the conservatives. Like whatever. I'm whatever. I'm just done. National divorce. So, but before we do national divorce, there was a little, and part of the reason I think Nord Stream wasn't covered as much is because there was this little storm called Ian that just rolled through Florida and just kind of really did a number on that state. It took a crazy track, and it wasn't what they were expecting. They were expecting it to hit the Panhandle, and man, that sucker just turned on a dime and went right across the Panhandle. Wreaked a whole lot of havoc. And I know Josh he's a Florida guy, man. Even though he don't live there right now, he's a Florida guy through and through. I don't know. I don't know if he's Florida or Lower Alabama. I don't know, one or the other. but he's got a lot of ties to
Indifference.
Florida. Yeah. But I think that just based on what I've seen so far, and I'd like to think I'm objective, but there's probably a lot of subjectivity because I really do like DeSantis right now. I think he's a good dude. I think he's a great governor. I think he would make a good president. I really love the way he handles things. I think he's done a good job of handling the situation. Josh, I mean, do you see any like shortcomings? Something he could have done better? What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always things that you can do better, but I don't, I haven't gotten into the gritty details on it. It's interesting that when Hurricane Katrina happened, we all know that the response to that was definitely they fumbled on the goal line with with Katrina, but nobody held the governor of Louisiana to task for the response to Katrina. It was all about the president, right? They drug Bush for the response to Katrina, and now here, they didn't say one thing about Biden being responsible for anything on Ian. It's all it's DeSantis. The one thing, and it came, once Ian came north, it crossed over Cuba, and it was projected to go into the Big Bend, Florida, right into this little place called St. Mark's, which is like 45 minutes south of where I grew up in Tallahassee. And I mean, I was even prepping, I was even prepping to go down to to stay with my mom, my parents, to help them, prepare and ride out the storm, because it's like, man, this is gonna be a big one. And then it took that hard right just south of Tampa, and it went into Naples, and Fort Myers, and it just destroyed it. I mean, it was a strong Cat 4 when it made landfall, and a lot of folks, tried to come out and automatically started sharpshooting. It's like, well, they didn't order evacuations until the last minute, blah, blah. And there was one interview, and DeSantis just absolutely dismantled this reporter from CNN, because she came up and she was like, well, why didn't you order, it was Lee County. She was, she's like, well, why didn't the evacuation order for Lee County happen sooner? And, on this day, and DeSantis flat out asked her, he's like, where were you at? Oh, that's right. You were in Tampa because that's where you thought the storm was going to hit, because that's what your network was saying. That's what all the weather forecasters were saying. And then this thing does, what Mother Nature does. It does what it wants. And it went in, just a little bit, further south than Tampa. And so, that kind of shut her up. I think DeSantis has done a wonderful job. A couple of, the highlights, or there's a little place called Pine Island. There's one bridge that goes to Pine Island. That's the only way you can get to it, other than boat. That bridge got, taken away in the hurricane. They had a bridge in place in less than 72 hours, already moving supplies across it. They restored power to 2 million people within 96 hours. I mean, that is, that's some next level stuff there. I remember growing up, as a kid, and, I mean, we had Hurricane Kate come through. I forget what year it was. It was in the 80s. And that was a big storm that came up into, the St. Mark's area. Dude, we didn't have power for like 2 weeks. And so to have power after, a couple of days after a Cat 4, like that's, yeah, he's handling it. And how that he's handling it is because you haven't heard story after story being pushed by the mainstream media about what a shitty job he's done. You just haven't heard anything. You just haven't heard anything. So that's how you know that he's done a really good job.
It's kind of funny because the one piece with Lee County or whatever it was, they tried to fact check him on it because he said, hey, 72 hours, nobody knew, everybody was in Tampa. And so even the fact checking article, and I won't get too deep in this, we'll say this for another episode, but it gets beyond gaslighting now to where you're just flat out lying. Even the fact check, and it wasn't one of the big ones. It wasn't like PolitiFact or whatever. It was probably some local yokel thing that I read on my Google News. And it came out and said false, or said mostly false. And it said, okay, initially the weather, everybody was tracking this thing going to Tampa, yada, yada, yada. But then models changed and it did favor going towards, was it Lee County, right? It did favor going towards Lee County. And at the very last line, it says, but 72 hours, those projections weren't made. So I'm like, well, then how was that mostly false? Like DeSantis said 3 days prior that there were no projections that it was going to hit. Not because they do like 1,000 models, right? So what they
Yeah.
know and all them, they take a handful. This is the most likely path that it's going to take.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, there was one previous hurricane that took a similar path, and that was Charlie. And I forget what year Charlie was, but it took a similar path. It came up, north over Cuba, and then it was, it was like, okay, that's going to go up into the Big Bend, into the, where the peninsula meets the Panhandle, and then it kind of tracked, it did that northeast track, across the peninsula. It never made it up into the Big Bend, but other than that, they came out in the one little place on Lee County. Like there's this little island off Lee County. And they were like, well, there wasn't any, no evacuation order was told for this place. And some reporters trying to, well, why was it this island, given an evacuation order and blah blah. And they turned around. I think it was the like the state FEMA director, whoever it was, came out and was like, it's uninhabited. Nobody lives there. Who are we going to order off there? Like the raccoons? And it was it was just like they were trying so hard to find something, to find something wrong. And it's just, I think he's done a good job. Biden went down there, and tried to, he tried to
nobody
tell
F's
people,
with a Biden.
yeah, nobody else with a Biden. It was like, what are you talking about? It's like, dude, you fell off your bike while it was, you literally fell off your bike. Like, stop with this, this tough guy stuff. I saw the picture of him shaking hands with Nikki Fried, um, and she's like, this is a real president, blah blah. And I think somebody tweeted at her. It may have been me. It's like, hey, you're like 30 years too old for Joe Biden. Like, he's not going to date you. You know, it was it's so ridiculous. But no, I think DeSantis has done a good job. I really hope he runs in 2024. Because
Did you guys see the Don Lemon interview with the NOAA director? So
yes,
Don Lemon's like, he's going through his little thing, and the NOAA director, he's I think he's the acting director, and he's talking about the path to hurricane and this and that, and Don Lemon's like, so, and I'm paraphrasing, he's like, so this is the effects of climate change. And again, it's the left conflating, because we know climate change happens. It's man-made, man-caused climate change. They forget to leave that out. And the NOAA director being pretty cool. I mean, he didn't bash him or whatever. He was just kind of like, well, you know what? You really can't tie one incident, one storm, one event to climate change. He goes, we can talk about that later if you want, but you can't really tie one. He goes back into the modeling, and Don Lemon's like, but you can tie this to climate change. He's like, well, no, it's kind of hard to do one event. Then Don Lemon pulls out the emotional people, right? I've lived down there, and these storms are becoming more intense. It's like, okay, dude, you've just lost your mind.
he is so dumb. He's so dumb.
Most people are dumb.
That's why he got demoted, right? He's on the morning show now. Like
Yeah,
or they're moving him to the morning show or whatever it was.
Yeah. That was the Pete Buttigieg. Like, well, I'm qualified to be transportation secretary because I like trains. I've ridden on an airplane before.
You
Time
like
limits,
to
like
eat.
climate change. I live there, and I know they're getting stronger.
Yeah. The whole thing about the hurricanes getting stronger and they're killing more people is just, are they getting stronger? Who the hell could know? How could you even know? We've been through this before.
I actually don't think the data supports it. I mean, I did a snippet. I think the numbers have actually decreased as well as the intensity.
But again, it's like I agree. Yes, you're right. But again, I go back to since when, and how much more accurate are the instruments that we have now than they were 100 years ago or 1,000 when there were no instruments. It's like, okay, so hurricane might have plowed into Florida back in 1863 and killed a bunch of people because they didn't have supportive structures and all that stuff. But the impact as far as human life, as far as if you extrapolate the numbers and everything, it probably killed more people, per capita because there were less people there. Because they didn't have the structures, they didn't have the meteorological equipment, they didn't know to leave, so on and so forth. But now we've got, I wouldn't say hurricane-proof structures, but there's way more people now. Okay, so the impact, and there's way more structures. So when they say they're more powerful, then Roger will come and say, well, the data doesn't support that because A, B, and C. Look back at history. Here's what we've got: wind speeds, rain, the tide coming in, the surge tide or whatever they call it. I'm not from Florida. I don't know all these terms. But then they'll come back and say, well, but they cost more now. It does more damage. Yeah, because it's more populated. There's more stuff there to destroy now. It's like people cannot take time into consideration. Number one, when we're talking about climate change and the strength of hurricanes, people can't even think back 100 years, much less in geological terms. Let's think 10,000, 100,000 years. I mean, look at climate models and stuff like that based on core samples. Those are hard to read as it is. And they call it settled science. It's like, man, we've talked that one to death. Did you either of you guys read that Crichton thing I sent you? No.
Yeah, I think I read it the first time you
Okay.
sent it out to us.
Yeah. Pretty good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he kind of makes those same arguments that, hey, this is where the money's at. Follow the money and you're going to see where all the research goes. I mean, I don't know. I do have a lot of friends. Josh is one of them who are, well, I don't have a lot of friends. I have a few friends who, people can barely stand the side of me, much less to listen to me. But I have a few friends who, hail from Florida, still have family there. And man, they were ready to go. They were ready to go. And our boy Jesse, that listens faithfully on his drives down desolate I-35, it's the worst drive on earth. He was ready to go, man, because his dad still, I think he lives down in the Keys somewhere. And Jesse's lived, like Josh, he's lived through a few of these hurricanes, seen what they can do, and so on and so forth. It's interesting to get people who have lived there and lived through hurricanes. It's one of the few natural disasters I haven't been a part of, is being in a hurricane. I was in Houston before one of them moved through Houston. I can't remember. It was 2008, 2009, whichever one moved through. I was the last flight out of Houston before that thing hit. And as we took off, they kind of banked around. And the pilot said, if you look out you're on your right, you can see the leading tip of the storm. And I was like, holy crap. But someday I'd like to safely weather a hurricane. I'd like to safely do that. You know what I'm saying? Where I'm very certain, I'm the 15th floor of a hurricane-proof building. I can just weather that thing. Category 2 maybe. I don't want to sit through a category 4.
Dude, category 2. That's That's an afternoon thunderstorm in the summer in Florida. Come on.
Yeah.
Nah, dude, you gotta get the full Monty. Like I said, growing up in Florida, we grew up with them, and it was. It wasn't bad, like a cat 1, 2, or 3, and you're like, man, that's a hurricane party. That's all right. We're gonna get some water. Maybe you want a generator. So I was in Southern Florida for my PADI dive certification dives when Andrew made its approach, and it was one of those things where I was a teenager, and you're a group of other teenagers, and a couple of adults, and everybody was kind of like, that's a hurricane. We're Floridians, like we got this shit. I will never, ever, ever ride out a Cat 4 or Cat 5 hurricane ever again, ever. Andrew was like, that was legit. Like that was a big hurricane, and it was super powerful. And if anybody remembers back what our first episode, second episode, Minute with Mo, like it leveled, like down to the dirt. Mo's hometown where he grew up in Homestead. It just completely raised it. So just real quick, a quick look. The strongest hurricane on record ever occurred in 1780. So the strongest hurricane ever. So, and Luke's spot on. It's more people live in areas. There's houses. There's $1 million homes on the beach where there weren't before, and people they measured the hurricanes, the impact of them in dollar amounts. And you're absolutely right. Well, of course, it destroyed more structures because more people live there. Because during COVID, guess what happened? People didn't move from Florida to go to New York and California. Guess what happened? People left those states to go to Florida. So now you have more, and you have a lot of elderly folks in Florida. And yeah, I grew up in Lower Alabama, right? So between Pensacola and Jacksonville, like that's truly Lower Alabama and Lower Georgia. Kind of Central Florida is kind of God's waiting room. Um, you know and then you got Miami, which is Miami, and then you have the Keys, which is kind of like the island of misfit toys. So yeah, no, I'm glad Joe and listener Joe, big game, he had to evacuate out of Central Florida. He went and stayed with his mom. So glad that all our Florida listeners are okay, and glad the majority of Floridians and folks made it through the storm. There were absolutely some fatalities, which is terrible, anytime, but glad our listeners are okay.
So sober October is affecting me, interestingly.
Yeah, it's actually killing me.
It's day 6, man. And I was like, this, okay, so it hasn't been the only problem I've had is the calorie intake, right? Because just about every night, I have my routine, right? I've gone through my day. I now, with my workout program, it's like, okay, I got to earn my beers. Okay. And so my routine is I've earned my beers. I've driven home, I got my 6-pack or whatever it is. And on it, just about every night I'm drinking minimum 4 beers, minimum, maximum 8. All right. Just about every night. That's a lot of calories, right? But it's light beer. So, I'm good. Right. So I obviously just stopped doing that. My wife says I'm crabby, but I don't think it's that. I really don't think that's because there's no beer involved. I swear to God, like on October, what was it, 3rd, I thought I was dying of hunger. Like I thought I was, I was like, it was at night. I was, didn't go through my routine. I earned my beer, but guess what? My body's like, okay, let's get those calories. You earned it. We put in our part. You put in yours. And I got home and I was like, Mother of God, there is nothing that sounds good besides an entire helping of macaroni, like an entire box of macaroni and cheese. It's like I have to. So I did. I made a whole.
Were you on the carpet with Hunter Biden looking for Parmesan cheese to eat?
Yes. Yeah, I was like a mix between that and David Hasselhoff when he was eating that cheeseburger.
The cheeseburger.
So I made the whole thing of mac and cheese and just the old school Kraft kind, and I put a whole pound of hamburger meat, cooked hamburger meat in there. And man, while I was eating it, it was like Hasselhoff on the floor, man. It was bad. But when I was done, I was like, oh, bro. I felt awful that night. But I've been craving, my body's craving extra calories.
I see your wife in the background. She's staring at you.
It's like,
that's not my wife. That's my niece.
It's like 3 Men and a Baby. Remember that scene when there's like that cardboard cut out of the dude standing in the window? That's exactly what that
is. So real quick, I gotta ask you, Luke, because dude, you're moving some serious weight around in the gym. How many grams of protein are you trying to take in every day?
My body weight. Whew. I'm trying to take that, but I'm not even coming close. But because honestly, it's too expensive to try, and I don't necessarily believe in protein powder. I don't think it's never worked for me personally. So I'm just trying to eat a lot of chicken, eggs, you name it, yogurt, so on and so forth. But, I was tracking it for a while, trying to, add up those macros and everything. And I think at tops, it was like 180 grams, but that's not even close to my body weight. But that's like, I can't eat any more than this.
Yeah.
And it's not a super strict, I'm just trying to, and basically it's not even because I'm trying to gain weight or get stronger. It's more, it's like getting hard to kill, of course, but I'm fueling during the day for my workout in the evening. That's how I see it. It's like, it's a performance type thing, but yeah. So Josh, are you still on the sober October wagon or not?
Yeah, no, man, I'm still on. I tell you the other day, I try before, October 1st, I limited myself, dude. I didn't have a drink or anything unless it was, Friday night, Saturday or Sunday. Because during the week I try and eat clean and, no drinking, and I save that stuff for the weekend. And, it's kind of like what Roger was doing, earlier. It's like, you know, tofu during the week and then, scarf down an entire 16-inch pizza, on Saturday morning for breakfast. So no, man, I'm still on. But the other day though, it was a day, and I was like, God, man, it's like I just wanted like just a 2-finger dram, man. I was like, all right. I was like, we're gonna stick through it. We're gonna do it.
I don't even know why we're doing it. I mean, honestly, like tonight, I'm taking my niece around. She's in town with my sister's wife. Or my sister's wife. What the hell? I'm losing my mind. With my wife's sister, and anyway, they're hanging out. And as I was driving her, we went and got some food, and I was just like, man, 6-pack. I mean, is that if I just had a 6-pack? I mean, that could still be sober October, right? Because I wouldn't be drunk. And I was like, nope, got to do it. And now I'm like, why am I doing this? But now it's the point. Now it's the point of being hard headed. It's like, okay, I've gone 6 days. Okay, well, just a couple more weeks left.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing. It's like, you know what? It's like you made a contract with yourself, and that's that.
And Roger's looking at us with that snide. He's like, y'all are idiots.
If you're going to do it, pick like February where it's got like the shortest amount of days. You don't pick one that's got 31 days.
Yeah. Right? I heard something the other day that they said some dude. Oh, it was that the guy is called More Plates, More Dates. Have you guys heard of that guy? He does a fitness blog. He's interesting, but he calls October to basically January 1st. It's called bulking season. It's like, okay,
do that.
But yeah, it's I've got a vacation or not what's it vacation? I've got a trip I got to take to Dallas, a week long, cyber seminar. And boy, if you think that I'm not going to want to grab a 6-pack every day, after an 8 to 5 cyber seminar, you got another thing coming. So that's going to be a tough one. Right in the middle too. It's like the 17th through the 22nd or something. It's gonna be brutal, man. It's gonna be
more power to both of you.
I told you I was walking through HEB the other day, and I was actually getting mad. I was getting angry at people putting beer in their carts. I was like,
"Don't you know it's sober October?
Don't you? I mean, why are you doing that? Why you got to be a jerk? All that beer, damn." So real quick, I want to give some shout outs real quick. First shout out is to Volodymyr Zelensky. Okay, shout out to him for assassinating a 29-year-old female I think it was in Moscow, the daughter of Alexander Dugin, who's one of Putin's advisors. Zelensky thought it might be a good idea to go ahead and assassinate her. So shout out to him. Those are the people that we're sending billions of dollars to, assassinating females, 29-year-old females in Moscow by car bomb. So yeah, way to go. Those are the people we're supporting. Yeah, real happy about that. There are no good guys in this fight, in case anybody didn't know. Ooh, okay, yeah. So appreciate Diego, Darren, Scott, Jed, and Allison. I always miss people. Shelly and Atkins. She still listens and likes a few of our posts and stuff like that. Shelly, feel free to comment or hit us up on the YouTube chat and all that whatnot. Really appreciate y'all listening, sticking with us. And I always forget to mention Shelly. They were really good neighbors back when we lived just outside of San Antonio. I always appreciated them and their friendship. And Eric in Amarillo, next week I'm gonna figure out a good way to plug their business in Amarillo. I told him I would. What I need to do first, I know they've done a marketing campaign there in Amarillo, Texas. I want to watch a few of those videos and kind of make sure I'm following their marketing line and not speaking out of turn. So I think they paid a little money for that marketing in Amarillo, and I want to go against that. So we'll plug his business next week. It's a good one. I actually hope to use it. So get ready for that plug the next time we record. I'll just kick it over to Roger.
Yeah, it's episode 100. We kind of built this thing up. We were going to try to bring some folks on, and everybody's just got a busy schedule. We still got a couple high profile folks that we're going to try to bring on here in the next couple weeks. I know Luke will be on the road for a little bit. I'll be on the road for about the next month. So the next recording you see me on, I'll probably be in the trailer or the trailer background or whatever. I'm not moving in with Josh down in Florida, so you'll know what's kind of going on. But quick shout out. My daughter Lauren, her boyfriend Jacob, they both listened to the show, sent me a little thing today, and it's actually I didn't text either one of them, let them know that we were recording today, but they were both like, hey, I'm sure you'll be recording your 100th episode pretty soon. It's a major milestone, especially for a mediocre show like the one that you guys produce and put out, because nobody listens. So it's amazing that you continue to beat your head against the wall and talk two heads of lettuce. So thanks for listening to us. Again, I think she's tracking like 5 or 6 episodes in a row, but we're actually on our way. We're on the trailer. We're actually on our way to go see her out in Georgia. So we're gonna go visit her for a little while. I'll slap her for those comments, and then I think on the way back, well, out there, I'm gonna link up with Josh. We'll probably, dude. You guys are not doing Sober October when I effing visit you guys. I'm just letting you know that right now. So I'll see I'll see Josh when I'm out there, and I think I'm going to swing by and try to see Luke on the way back if he can fit me in. I don't know. Maybe you can just throw me in the mix of the illegal immigrants and the detainees, and just kind of visit me here and there. But we are definitely going to at least crack a beer. But shout out to all the listeners out there, especially Jacob and Lauren. Thanks. Also, who hit me up during the show was Isaac, Cajun Conservative. So we were having our Senate debate tonight with Mark Kelly and Blake Masters. He's actually watching, hit me up. He's like, hey, man, you watching this? I'm like, no, we're actually watching our recording our 100th episode right now. He said, congratulations to me anyway. He didn't really give a crap about you two guys, but, hopefully he's, thanks for listening to us. But, hey, thanks to everybody out there, and I'll kick it to Josh to close out.
Yeah, thanks. So Isaac just celebrated a birthday the other day. I'm sure you guys hit him up and wished him a happy birthday. So hey, shout out again to our Florida folks. Kevin, Big Kevin, Big Game, Joe, Ginger Inferno, and everybody else in Florida who listens. Glad you guys made it through unscathed and well. Jason, man, John, man, there's a lot of folks. Wes, that are out there listening. Thanks for taking the time to listen to us ramble and babble.
And one of them's an insider threat, right? One of them is an insider threat that's reporting your year-old Facebook posts that's pretending to be your friend.
Yeah, no, 100%. I need to vet people a little bit better than I do. So, all right, that's going to do us for this one. So until next time, stay frosty and keep those canteen cups full.